The 2020 United States presidential election was one of the most contentious in modern history. Held on November 3rd, 2020, it pitted incumbent Republican President Donald Trump against Democratic challenger Joe Biden. The election saw unprecedented voter turnout, partly due to the expansion of mail-in voting options during the COVID-19 pandemic. As the votes were counted, the initial leads in several key swing states began to shift. This phenomenon, known as the red mirage or blue shift, was anticipated by experts. In-person votes, which were counted first, tended to favor Trump, while mail-in ballots, counted later, heavily favored Biden. However, as Biden's lead grew in critical states, a powerful and persistent narrative of widespread election fraud began to form. This narrative, often called the Big Lie, alleged that the election was systematically stolen from Donald Trump. The claims originated from the president himself and were amplified by his allies and supporters. Social media platforms became a fertile ground for the rapid dissemination of these allegations. One of the most prominent theories centered on Dominion Voting Systems, a company that provides voting hardware and software. It was falsely claimed that Dominion machines were programmed to switch votes from Trump to Biden. Proponents of this theory alleged that the company had ties to Venezuela and other foreign entities. These claims were thoroughly investigated and found to be baseless by election officials and cybersecurity experts. Dominion later filed several high-profile defamation lawsuits against those who spread the falsehoods. Mail-in ballots also became a primary target of the fraud allegations. The unprecedented volume of mailed votes was presented as an opportunity for widespread manipulation. Stories circulated about ballots being found in rivers and ditches, though these were often isolated incidents or misinterpretations. Claims were made that thousands of dead people had voted in the election. Investigations revealed that while clerical errors do occur, the number of confirmed cases of votes cast in the name of the deceased was minuscule. In Georgia, a video of election workers counting ballots in Fulton County was presented as a smoking gun. It was alleged that workers pulled suitcases full of ballots from under a table after observers had left. State election officials, however, quickly debunked this claim, explaining that the suitcases were standard ballot containers. They clarified that the counting process was normal and had been observed by an independent monitor. Another viral claim, known as Sharpie Gate, emerged from Arizona. Voters alleged that using county-provided Sharpie pens caused their ballots to be invalidated. Election officials in Maricopa County repeatedly assured voters that Sharpies were safe and did not invalidate ballots. The design of the ballots prevented bleed-through from affecting the vote count. Despite these official explanations, the conspiracy theory persisted online. The Trump campaign and its allies launched a massive legal effort to challenge the election results. Over 60 lawsuits were filed in various states, alleging different forms of fraud and irregularities. These legal challenges were overwhelmingly unsuccessful. Judges, including many appointed by Trump himself, dismissed the cases due to a lack of evidence. Courts consistently found that the claims of widespread fraud were not supported by credible facts. One case did reach the Supreme Court, but it was a dispute among states and was quickly dismissed. The legal effort failed to change the outcome of the election in any state. Even before the election, Trump had cast doubt on the integrity of the voting process. He repeatedly claimed that the only way he could lose was if the election were rigged. This preemptive narrative laid the groundwork for the post-election challenges. A coalition of federal and state agencies, including the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, EISA, issued a statement, declared the 2020 election to be the most secure in American history. The statement affirmed that there was no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Vi har fortsat det. It's Jag var bara att bad för när The head of Caesar, Chris Crepes, was subsequently fired by President Trump. In early December 2020, Attorney General William Barr, a Trump appointee, made a significant announcement. He stated that the Department of Justice had not found evidence of fraud on a scale that could have changed the election's outcome. Barr's statement was a major blow to the narrative of a stolen election. He later resigned from his position before the end of Trump's term. Republican election officials in states like Georgia and Arizona also pushed back against the false claims. Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, defended the integrity of his state's election count. He and his family faced intense pressure and threats for refusing to find more votes for Trump. The conspiracy theories fueled a grassroots movement known as Stop the Steal. Supporters organized rallies and protests across the country, demanding that the election results be overturned. This movement culminated on January 6, 2021, in Washington, D.C. On that day, Congress was set to certify Joe Biden's victory. President Trump held a rally near the White House, where he encouraged his supporters to march to the Capitol. Thousands of protesters then marched down Pennsylvania. A large group of them breached police lines and violently stormed the U.S. Capitol building. The attack was an unprecedented assault on American democracy. Lawmakers were forced to evacuate, and the certification process was halted for hours. The riot resulted in multiple deaths, numerous injuries, and widespread damage. The events of that day were broadcast live around the world, shocking global audiences. In the aftermath, the election fraud narrative did not disappear. It led to calls for audits of the 2020 election results in several states. The most prominent of these was the audit conducted in Maricopa County, Arizona. This partisan audit was run by a private company with no prior election experience. The process was widely criticized by election experts for its lack of transparency and flawed methodology. After months of recounting and analysis, the final report of the audit was released. It ultimately found no proof of widespread fraud, and even confirmed that Biden had won the county by a slightly larger margin. Despite these findings, the belief in a stolen election has become a core tenet for a significant portion of the population. This has had a profound impact on public trust in democratic institutions. Polls have consistently shown that a large number of Republicans believe the 2020 election was illegitimate. Conspiracy has also fueled changes to election laws in numerous states. Many new laws have added restrictions on voting, particularly regarding mail-in ballots and voter access. Proponents argue these laws are necessary to secure elections, while opponents claim they are designed to suppress votes. It has influenced candidate endorsements and primary elections within the Republican Party. Candidates who endorse the big lie have often received more support from the party's base. The division over the 2020 election highlights a deep-seated polarization in the country. It reflects a broader crisis of information and trust in media and government. Fact-checkers and news organizations have worked extensively to debunk the false claims. However, in a fragmented media environment, many people remain within their own information bubbles. Question of whether the election was stolen has become a matter of political identity rather than factual debate. For supporters of the theory, no amount of evidence to the contrary seems to be enough. They point to perceived anomalies and sworn affidavits as their proof. For opponents, the lack of any concrete evidence in court is the ultimate rebuttal. They argue that the claims were a deliberate attempt to undermine democracy, The legacy of the 2020 election fraud conspiracy is still unfolding. It has created a lasting rift in the American electorate. It has also raised fundamental questions about the stability of democratic norms. The narrative serves as a stark reminder of the power of misinformation. It demonstrates how quickly falsehoods can take root and spread in the digital age. Ultimately, every official investigation and court ruling concluded that there was no widespread fraud. The election's outcome was the result of a free and fair vote. The conspiracy remains a powerful myth, a story of a stolen election that persists against all evidence. This narrative continues to shape political discourse and the future of American elections. The controversy began almost immediately, as election night 2020 drew to a close. Initial results seemed to show a strong lead for the incumbent. This was largely due to the order in which different types of ballots were counted. Many states counted their in-person, same-day votes first. These votes, cast on election day, tended to be from more Republican-leaning voters. Processing of mail-in ballots, however, was a much slower and more deliberate process. These ballots had been favored by Democrats, partly due to the pandemic. As these mail-in ballots were tallied in the hours and days following the election, the vote counts began to shift dramatically. This shift was particularly pronounced in key swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. It was this predictable, yet dramatic, shift that the fraud narrative seized upon. Allegations of ballot dumps in the middle of the night began to fly. These were, in reality, the legitimate reporting of tabulated mail-in vote totals. The claim ignored the fact that election counting has never been fully completed on election night. The legal team spearheading the challenges held numerous press conferences. They presented charts and witnesses to allege a coordinated conspiracy. However, when they went to court, their evidence was found to be lacking. Many of their witnesses were presenting hearsay or speculation. Statistical analyses they presented were often flawed or misinterpreted. For instance, they pointed to voter registration numbers that exceeded 100% in some counties. Election officials explained this is common due to outdated rolls that haven't been recently purged of people who moved or died. It does not, however, mean that more people voted than were eligible. The pressure campaign extended to local election officials. They were inundated with threats and harassment from those who believed the conspiracy. This created a hostile environment for the public servants tasked with running elections. The January 6th attack was the violent apex of this campaign. It was a direct result of the weeks of rhetoric about a stolen election. The rioters explicitly stated they were there to stop the steal. They believed they were acting patriotically to save their country. This disconnect between belief and reality is central to the entire controversy. Following the attack, there was a second impeachment of Donald Trump for incitement of insurrection. He was ultimately acquitted by the Senate. The societal fractures caused by the conspiracy theory have not healed. Families and friendships have been broken over the disagreement. The term fake news has become a common refrain to dismiss unfavorable information. This erosion of shared reality poses a significant challenge to a functioning democracy. Hand recounts and risk-limiting audits were conducted in multiple states, including Georgia. These audits are the gold standard for verifying election results. In every case, they confirmed the accuracy of the original machine count. The differences found were minimal and did not alter the outcome. This provided further evidence against the claims of widespread machine-based fraud. The narrative, however, is not built on evidence but on a deep-seated distrust of institutions. It taps into a feeling that the system is rigged against ordinary people. The conspiracy offers a simple explanation for a complex and disappointing outcome. transforms a political loss into a heroic battle against a shadowy cabal. The story of the stolen election is a myth in the classical sense. It's a narrative that explains the world and one's place in it. It is not based on fact, but on faith in a particular leader and worldview. The challenge for the future is how to bridge this divide. How can trust be rebuilt in a post-truth environment? There are no easy answers to these questions. The conspiracy of the 2020 election is more than just a political dispute. It is a symptom of deeper societal and technological shifts. The story is not over. It continues to evolve and influence the world.